Welcome to the At the Coalface Podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. This podcast is all about what it's really like in the trenches of digital and e-commerce. Mr. Mike Angell, welcome to the pod. It is awesome to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun to chat.
I've always loved your name. Ever since I first met you, for some reason, it's a cool name for a start off, but it always reminds me a little bit of Chris Angell as well, and I think Chris Angell's pretty cool as well. So I'm sure you hear that a lot, but I do actually love your name. I think it's very memorable.
Yeah, I haven't had the Chris Angell one much. Like growing up, Michelangelo, all those sort of forms of it definitely happened.
Hey, anything that will make you more memorable, especially, I guess, in Silicon Valley, is a very good thing. And I guess combine your name with your Aussie accent and boom, instant standout.
Let's hope so. I'll take anything that makes it easier.
Good one. Well, look, we have been friends, professional friends for a number of years now. I've obviously been following your career with interest. Those of us down here in ANZ and e-commerce have to stick together. And I've always been impressed with your combination, I guess, of technical ability combined with your experience, combined with your passion for customer, but passion for building things, passion for technology, and I guess combining all of that together into some new cool stuff. And I guess that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I think what you're working on at the moment, which we'll get into a little bit later on in more depth, is exciting. It's transformative. It has the ability to potentially disrupt the entirety of the e-commerce industry as we know it today. And obviously, I'll let you tell a little bit of your origin story and your sort of elevator pitch in a second. But obviously, I followed you, right? From Culture Kings to Fast to Shopify, then in the early days of TalkShop and Vox, and then right through to the Carded days. So, it has been really exciting, I guess, to see the evolution of your career and obviously your move to the States, to Silicon Valley and San Fran and setting up Carded and then moving back to Aussie with COVID and all that sort of stuff. So it has been an exciting run, at least. For you, it's probably been tiring and exhausting, but as an outsider, watching what you do and being able to watch the level of transparency that you've brought to what you do and sharing that with the world via LinkedIn and other channels it's been amazing to watch. So maybe you can tell us, I guess, anything that I've not covered or plug in the gaps of anything I've not covered. Give us the elevator pitch of Mike Angell and how you got to be where you are.
Yeah, so I'm awesome, by the way. It started a long time ago, I guess. So I guess I was lucky enough, I think like yourself, is that I started in e-commerce right at its infancy, sort of in e-commerce in Australia. So I actually started with an agency. I don't know, that would have been like 15 years ago now. And I ended up with a customer that ended up taking all my time. And I'm like, I can't even maintain this agency because they require so much of my time. And at the time, that was Black Milk Clothing, who obviously actually went on to become the first Shopify Plus store. They did crazy things like $1 million out, like days back in whatever year, that 2009, which was sort of unheard of. And from there, the cool thing about Black Milk Clothing was actually we built the very first UGC app. So it was the first case of anyone ever being able to tag social media and then that displaying on the actual e-commerce site, which is obviously known as social proof today. But back then we were just trying to find a way for people to upload content. So it was cool. And that's where my journey of probably social commerce began, and probably where I've kind of leaned a little bit into being on the innovative side of e-commerce. Then from Black Milk, I went on to a couple of other places. I went internally at obviously bigger fashion groups. If you've ever been inside one of those, you know how different they are to sort of the startup, awesome, cool brands that are trending. They're more sort of how do we continue to run this brand for 10 more years? And then lucky enough, Simon from Culture Kings reached out. I went in there and I went in there to help them for 2 weeks on a project they were doing. And then obviously that led into me eventually becoming COO because they just kept having fun and we were building cool stuff. So yeah, definitely Culture Kings was an awesome experience, except they do obviously retail very differently than everyone else, and that's always cool to be a part of. And then eventually I decided with Culture Kings, I've always helped brands grow. So that's when I decided I was going to leave and actually try and do something in e-commerce as a whole. So that I didn't know what I was doing yet. I actually it was actually called Carded back then, but it's not the Carded that we're building today. And that got the attention of Toby, actually the founder of Shopify, because it was a way to accelerate Shopify stores that it was about 100 to 1,000 times faster than what Shopify was running. So they asked me to come inside Shopify and help them work on some projects to try and improve Shopify performance. Which then led on to Fast. Literally the day I left Shopify, Dom from Fast just randomly reached out and said, "Hey, can you come to San Francisco and build a one-click checkout product for me?" So the cool thing is he paid for me to go over there. He said, "I'll do whatever you need to. Come fly over on Friday." So I think it was Wednesday. By Friday, I was on a plane into San Francisco, flew over there and actually went in and built the first version of the product over 3 months with a small team there. And that's where I met my co-founder Holly, who we saw the rise of TikTok and we're just talking about it. I actually told Holly I wasn't planning to ever build another app because I've built some previously, and I said, well, TikTok's really booming, and I saw it with Instagram when I was back at Black Milk. So I'm like, oh, if you jump on this TikTok sort of video trend, it'll be a pretty cool app. And then somehow she convinced me to build it with her. We whipped it out in a couple of weekends, launched it. We ended up with awesome clients like Princess Polly, a whole bunch of others, White Fox, even Culture Kings uses it. And then when we were building it, we ended up in Carded. And I guess I'll go over more detail of that, but that's sort of how we got to where we are now.
That's an exciting journey, man. And yeah, look, I guess one of the things that always has stood out to me with you is the fact that because you come at things very much from a retailer's perspective, you do understand what that means. And you understand the need to actually sell shit. You understand the need to drive revenue. You understand the need to drive profitability. You understand the need to latch onto UGC and create a culture around the brand that allows you to scale the brand via, at the time we didn't really use the term influencers back in the Black Milk days, but obviously that's what they were. Reputation management, I guess, is probably what it was called back in the day, or just people that were out there evangelizing your brand or your product through self-usage and advocacy of your product. And I guess because you started out really, you understood the challenges of agency life and servicing customers of that scale, but you also have the empathy and the retail lens, and you understand the unique challenges that both retailers and brand advocates face. And you've kind of, I guess, fused that knowledge and fused that empathy for both sides of the coin into kind of everything you've done. And so you understand, okay, the end customer needs to have this experience to appreciate, respect, and love the brand. The brand needs to be able to do these things to be able to generate that love and trust and create that fantastic UX. And so I guess from my perspective, it is that unique stack of experiences that you have and that unique empathy that you're able to have because of that experience that has kind of fused its way through to everything you've done.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the crazy thing is, like, even though all these things are slightly different, it always just comes back for me to like the core principle is like, if you create an experience for your customer that's just makes their life happier or better or any of this stuff, then you're always going to succeed. And I think that's something that people miss so much. And there's different forms of that. So obviously every customer, like every demographic, I would say, obviously interacts differently. But when you really figure that part out, I think that's where it really does well. The hard part of being multidisciplinary in my thing is most people don't realize I'm as technical as what I am, and I can actually write code to a level of most developers. So yeah, that's always been the hardest one to probably convince people. And then they don't realize people get hesitant to talk technical with me sometimes because they think I'm obviously operations or marketing. And it's like, oh, no, I actually know exactly what you're talking about. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've fought that throughout my whole career too, because I'm not a developer, but I'm probably one of, if not the most technical non-developers from an architectural and I guess technical perspective, at least in this part of the world, that really is around. And so, I mean, I can delve into API docs and I can understand things at a really, really technical level. And when I'm doing architecture on a new platform, whatever the case may be, I can understand the deep, deep technical nature of the platform, and I can architect around and based on that technical ability of the platform. But, you know, like you, I guess because I don't come from a dev background, it always takes people, even developers, it takes them a little bit of time to warm to me until they realize, oh, this guy's not just talking shit. He actually knows what he's talking about. And then once you've got that respect, then it's easy from then on out because they're quite happy to talk the technical language. And then when I'm talking to business owners, then I'm quite happy to talk the business language with them, and I can translate going both directions. And I feel like that's one of your great gifts as well is being able to translate, you know, these user requirements or customer requirements or experiential requirements into language that developers can understand, and being able to get them on board with the vision of where you're trying to go with this product that ultimately requires a bunch of developers to build. Do you feel like that translation skill is, you know, whilst it's a challenge to deal with and sort of convince people and help them understand how technical you are, that gift must be helpful as you get into product development?
Yeah, and I'd say the biggest advantage over the years in e-commerce is probably being able to call out shit from salespeople, or like as a new vendor trying to sell you something. Obviously, everyone's always trying to suck money out of merchants, so the more you can obviously increase your technical capability, the more chance you have of choosing the solutions that are actually going to grow your business rather than just paying for stuff that you don't even need.
Yep. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think every business needs someone, you know, technical inside their business to keep the vendors and the partners honest, as you say, because without that, it's almost like, you know, the old school mentality with a lot of mechanics. When they see a woman walking through the door with her car, they feel like they can take advantage of her. She might be more, you know, she might be fully capable of working on her own car, but they have that assumption that when you come through the door that they're going to be, you know, they'll be able to fleece them because they feel like they can pull the wool over their eyes. And I feel like with a lot of brands that maybe don't have someone technical inside their business, particularly e-com technical, because IT technical and e-com technical, they are, you know, different colors of a similar beast, but they really, when you're talking e-com tech in particular, there is a certain specialization there that you really have to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff from a vendor and a tech and a modeling perspective.
Yeah, definitely agree.
If we change gears now towards the new version of Carded, because I was obviously very aware of the old gen Carded, which was the theme accelerator for Shopify, and I loved obviously what you did there and you know how you sort of helped internalize that at Shopify. But if we change gears a little bit to the new generation, the next generation of Carded, I guess from my perspective, if I was to describe it to you as the following, tell me how close I get to what you're really looking to achieve ultimately with Carded. I see it as a universal headless commerce API layer. So it's an API layer and a database layer that allows commerce to be done everywhere across pretty much all systems and platforms simultaneously in a marketplace type of it's kind of a combination of a marketplace and a referral model, and you facilitate all of the plumbing underneath that let's just call it a distributed social marketplace or distributed marketplace, decentralized marketplace, all facilitated through microservices and your API layer, which is effectively the plumbing and the tooling that allows you know, whether it be influencers or whether it be merchants to tap into your API layer to be able to sell products almost like in a drop shipping way, but not really, but allows them to sell or to recommend a whole bunch of products that they don't physically own or warehouse themselves. If they don't have it, but they want to sell it or want to be able to recommend it, then your plumbing will facilitate that happening. So you will suck in all the data from all the merchants that are selling all these various different products around the globe. And then on the flip side of that, you will facilitate getting that data into other merchant platforms, other social marketplaces, et cetera, to facilitate the end-to-end transaction and therefore the monetization of that transaction where a brand is selling products on behalf of another merchant, for example. So Universal Commerce API, facilitating a distributed global marketplace is kind of how I understand Carded to be. But tell me how wrong or right I may have gotten that.
No, I think that's really spot on. And I think the distributed marketplace is probably where it makes sort of the most sense to some people. It is a hard concept to explain because it obviously is a bit different to how people view things today. Because most people see the two different sides. It's a marketplace like Amazon, or it's a host it yourself like Shopify. So I suppose we are like this weird hybrid in the middle of the two that's even slightly different than that. So yeah, we're about being sort of a network. And the biggest difference of what we're doing that no one's really done before is that usually every other platform has an opt-in model for merchants, whereas we more have an opt-out. So the best example to that is probably if you think of Google and the fact that your website is linked via Google and indexed by Google. You never had to submit to Google to do that. They're basically just crawling the web. We do the same thing. So we kind of have a crawler just as big as what Google has, and the fact that we can scan the web and we identify things for sale. And as soon as we identify it, we pretty much bring it into our network as one of the options that can be purchased. And then that's where it leads into the distributed marketplace. And that could be anything. So obviously social's a channel, voice is a channel, video is a channel. Collaborative commerce, like you said, is another channel. There's all these new ways of doing commerce that we believe are coming through. And we're about how do we enable that without every time there's new tech, a merchant usually has to do an upgrade. And as you know, merchants don't usually have the technical ability to do that. So it's like, how do we upgrade commerce without anyone having to lift a finger? But yeah, consumers can still experience the new way of doing things.
Awesome. So let's unpick this a little bit more for the non-technical, and let's unpick it from every I guess touch point that your APIs handle. So obviously you've got to ingest data from somewhere. So for example, you have to understand the XML model, for example, of a Shopify, a Magento, a BigCommerce, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, basically all of the various e-commerce platforms that are out there in the marketplace that merchants are using to sell products online. You have to speak their API language. You have to ingest effectively, like when you crawl the web, you identify these e-commerce websites, I'm guessing by their header information, so that you can detect which e-commerce platform it may be that they're running, and therefore your system knows how to crawl that particular site, ingest the product information and the product URLs and pricing and everything else through that scraping of the web. You then index that content or those products in a product database, and you must standardize it in some fashion so that you can understand that, you know, where one website might call a Nike shoe the exact same Nike shoe something slightly different as another website that has the exact same Nike shoe. You know, you may drill down to the SKU level, for example, and that helps you to link together similar products in your database. And then on the flip side, that's ingestion. So you're crawling the internet, you're crawling all these merchant websites, so you understand what's available out there in the market from which country and what the URLs are and pricing and all that sort of stuff. And then from there, on the flip side of that, you have an output, almost like a product feed file that comes out from you, almost like a GoData feed, but instead of it being, you know, one merchant's feed that goes into a shopping comparison website, for example, it is a universal feed composed of products and URLs from all the merchants that you're scraping. And then there is consumption of that API on the flip side, where we can take a feed down, whether we're a website that sells Nike shoes, for example, and we may not carry all the different models and sizes of that shoe. So therefore, we're going to augment our offering with your feed and products from your feed. We're going to display that to be sold on our website, or an influencer may tag a product or whatever from your feed in one of their one of their videos or whatever the case may be. So there's going to have to be apps that consume your product feed on the other side so that they can be integrated into those buying experiences wherever that may take place. Am I understanding the basics of this properly?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you just explained, well, you explained the first half of the system. Yeah, 100%. And yeah, so I suppose that's where people see our company a little bit, where they probably get it wrong the most, in the fact that they think we're a solution for merchants, and we're not. We're a solution for those platforms and those apps that are trying to build new channels that can obviously drive sales to these merchants. So yeah, but definitely spot on. That's like, yeah, better than I could probably explain it myself.
So you see yourself as an ally, actually, and in some respects more valuable to the Shopifys and the BigCommerces and the Magentos of the world than you do all, even to the end consumer, the influencer, et cetera, because obviously if you're a Shopify, for example, and you're trying to figure out a way without building your own marketplace of Shopify merchants, which they're loath to do that for a number of reasons, but they've tiptoed down that path. But effectively, for you, you're building a tool that makes or creates an environment where Shopify doesn't have to go create a marketplace of Shopify merchants to be able to hawk their wares on as a central buying location for everything listed on all Shopify sites the world over. You're doing that, but you're not just doing it for Shopify. You're doing it for every other platform and every other channel on the internet that does commerce in any way, shape, or form. Is that an accurate sort of understanding of where you're headed with this and how you see the value prop? The value prop is more for these platform vendors and therefore their merchants that use those platforms.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, reality is that that Shopify marketplace you talk about, Jason, you could go launch that if you just use Carded, because we obviously have every Shopify store. So all you've got to do is launch Jason's Shopify marketplace, and you can sell anything across any Shopify store. And it obviously routes all the orders to the merchants that are going to fulfill those orders.
Right. So so in that sense, it's a distributed marketplace. So let's say I did that. So let's use this as a use case, and let's go fully down that rabbit trail just to help, I guess, trying to describe something without a kind of almost a real world use case is always a little bit challenging for people to visualize. So if let's say tomorrow I set up a Jason's Shopify marketplace, right? What would be so I would consume your API, which lists all the products and all the URLs of those products. So I'd have to build the marketplace front end, and I'd have to build the checkout, etc. But I'd be leveraging your APIs so that, for example, if I wanted to have a consolidated cart within my marketplace where they could add products from 5 different Shopify merchants from my marketplace into the cart all at the same time, similar to Amazon, check out once, pay once, they would pay. Would I be the merchant of record in that environment? So they'd actually be paying me when they check out. And then I would, via your APIs, pay the merchants that actually are fulfilling those goods. And then you would distribute those orders via your API to those Shopify merchants, place the orders on my marketplace's behalf with the destination address being my marketplace customer's address. And then would you ingest for example, the shipment information, the tracking information back into your APIs for me to ingest back into my marketplace to present back to the customer in the My Account section of my marketplace, for example?
Yeah. So this is probably the part we didn't talk. So this is more the checkout, and it works very much like a headless checkout API. So our checkout works in real time. So in those scenarios, like when the customer adds an item to a cart, we are literally at that same time adding that real item into the real cart of the retailer that's going to fulfill that. And the reason we do that is that's how we do real-time inventory, how we get back tax calculation, how we get back shipping options. So every step that you do through a checkout, we're usually doing that across the merchants that are going to fulfill the items in your cart. And then that way, when you get up to the shipping stage, we're actually giving you real-time shipping rates that are actually provided by the merchant. So everything is 100% the end thing. As far as merchant of record, there is actually different ways we can set up. But ultimately, the most common case is actually no, we are the merchant of record. We absorb the risk, and we also process the transactions on your behalf. So we're actually half e-commerce tech, but we're also half fintech. We are actually a bank issuer, and we do have acquiring services built into what we do. To simplify,
yeah, no, that makes complete sense, and that helps to clarify a hell of a lot. So when that order is placed on that Shopify, on those 5 Shopify websites, it's a carded account holder that it gets created via API in that site. So it's a carded, the carded is the customer, and carded makes the payment via API at checkout, and that order information flows back to carded. And then on the flip side of that, that carded makes that purchase information or purchase success information and shipping information, everything else, it translates that and maps that back to the original purchaser on the front end, because you're now the merchant of record effectively for that sale. And then you're furnishing that information back to the consumer of your selling APIs, so that we can then present that back to the end customer who's bought those goods.
Yeah, and there's a few actually privacy and other things built in. The fact that you, as Jason Marketplace, you probably want to send your own consolidated email. You don't want all those brands individually sending confirmation emails for everything. So we use, if you've ever used like the Apple email privacy feature, we have a feature like that too. So when we place an order, we're not really using the customer's real details. So the brands can't start outreaching and spamming and all these other things that some brands try and do. So we protect the customers for obviously Jason's Marketplace and make it seamless. Because a big reason why we do the payment layer is ultimately we are placing 5 orders, but we do that on our side and we consolidate it. And then as far as the consumer is concerned, they're just getting charged once by us at the start of the process. And once we receive those funds, we obviously complete the order with the merchants.
Right. Makes sense. And so you probably can't say which payments service underneath you guys are using, but I'm guessing it's something like a Stripe, for example. You guys are not, or have you guys effectively built a Stripe equivalent to power your underlying fintech and payment plumbing?
So there's 2 parts of it. So in payments is obviously acquiring and issuing. On issuing, we are working directly with Visa. So we were lucky enough to get part of their fast track program that we got approved for a few months ago. So we work with Visa on that side. But then on the processing side, which is the side that people see the most, is that we will be actually making probably some partnerships on that side, because we always submit an order with a credit card, but what that means is that we can actually stick any payment method on top of a merchant that doesn't usually support it. So like we can accept in Afterpay and pay via credit card. We can accept in Bitcoin and then pay by credit card. So we actually have the ability to add payment methods for consumers on top of merchants that don't support them today.
Right. Okay. So because you are the merchant of record and because you are the acquirer as well, that means that so long as you have relationships with those various payment method providers as an acquirer, then you can surface that through your APIs to the merchants who are consuming your APIs, and then therefore they're available effectively in a headless checkout model, and all of those payment methods that you service up via API are just simply visible, and they're just displayed through through Ajax on the front end or something like that.
Yeah, and as to be honest, we don't have to do that, the acquiring side. So you as Jason Marketplace, you can set up any payment method that you want. And there's actually a lot of UK use cases we have contacting us, especially when it comes to international cross-border stuff. Obviously, people in like Sweden may want to buy products that are in the US. So when you pair carded with a freight forwarder and a unique payment option, you can kind of enable new commerce, like cross-border commerce, that hasn't been possible before.
Nice. Okay, cool. Well, I think I kind of understand that particular use case. Let's go down the path of 2 additional use cases, and and then you can sort of walk me through how carded would facilitate these two different use cases. So let's say I'm a merchant today, and let's say I don't know, let's say I'm a shoe retailer, and I sell, 10 different brands of shoes, and or let's say I'm Culture Kings. Let's use a real life brand. Let's say I'm Culture Kings and I'm on Shopify, and I carry Nike, or I carry DC shoes, or let's use DC shoes because they're a street shoe. I carry DC shoes, but I don't carry every single model, every single size, and every single color of DC shoes, because I'm only selling today on my Culture Kings website the shoes that I can get from the local distributor, so that I can get from Accent Group or whoever the local distributor is. I buy off the disty, or I get a feed from the disty of what they've got available. I make those available on my website with whatever my margin is on top and the experiential stuff, and I sell it, and I keep the margin, right? But because the local distributor probably only has a limited range, and because I only maybe stock a limited range, I can't sell every DC shoe and every color and every size that's available on the planet. But somewhere out there, there are merchants that sell, whether it be 5 different merchants across the United States. How would I consume, if I'm Culture Kings, your API to facilitate the sale of those catalogs that I don't carry, catalog items that I don't carry through my website?
Yes, this probably is this is kind of where we lead in, that we are a bit more of a distributed marketplace, and we aren't always the end solution. So when I say that, I guess what I mean is that we actually, the people that implement us are probably a Shopify app that's going to actually provide that service to Culture Kings. So although we can facilitate that, I suppose we don't have the little app and UI that makes that easy. That use case, we've actually probably got a whole bunch of businesses that are trying to build that, and they're missing the part that we provide, which is the availability to all these products. So in that example, I would say one of these apps is going to build an interface where you can just obviously add product, like literally can search our network of products that you can buy and just add them to your store. And they will likely just use the Shopify API to be able to, when you place an order, they'll then push that through to us so that we can fulfill that order. So from a customer point of view, you probably bought 3 things from Culture Kings: a shirt, shorts, and then the shoes. Obviously, Culture Kings decides they're going to fulfill the top 2, and the bottom item comes into our network. And we actually have smart routing. So it's you might be obviously in Sydney. We might have a retailer in Sydney that has that shoe. They're obviously got the best price, and they probably have the best delivery option. So we'll actually route that from that retailer because it's going to provide the best end user consumer experience.
Right. Okay. So let's just take it for granted. Let's assume that there was an app out there that allowed me to do that as Culture Kings in the App Store of Shopify, that allowed me to tap into your APIs and allowed me to list, search and just list things either as variants underneath an existing parent product in Shopify, or to create a totally new product in Shopify with all of its variants and its pricing. Where would it be the app vendor that would create the UI where the merchant could, for example, say, okay, everything that comes into this app, I want to add 10% to that from my margin on the front end, so that when I sell it, I make 10%? Or is there a different model whereby, how does a merchant, so is it your vision that somebody like Culture Kings would simply sell that product even if it was just at the same price that the retailer is going to charge them for that product, or charge you for that product, for the sake of being able to A, not lose the sale, B, get the customer's details and keep them within their own ecosystem? Or is it your expectation they would add a margin for themselves as well, so that they continue to make money on products they sell from other suppliers?
Yeah, so I think this comes down to the fact that we can't execute our vision in one stage. So obviously the first stage that we're going through now is, how do we enable something that wasn't possible before? And that is just being able to at least get the product into Culture Kings. If they want to do a markup, that's probably what they would like to do now, because they're obviously providing convenience. I think the extra fees obviously justified. But obviously long term is that once people start to be comfortable with collaboration, which if you've ever talked to merchants, everyone gets a little bit nervous because it's sort of never been done well before, is that we will start to provide the ability for whatever that retailer is that we will facilitate obviously a share of profits between that retailer and Culture Kings. So if Culture Kings knows that they sell that shoe, they could possibly get 10% commission, like 10% profit, and then the retailer fulfilling it gets 10% profit. And everyone's happy in that situation because that retailer was never going to get the order. Culture Kings was going to possibly lose a customer because they might have just gone elsewhere to find the shoe. So it's about, that's why I suppose that example is called collaborative commerce. So I suppose there's an affiliate type model that has to come in long term. That's not here right now because it obviously takes commercial deals with retailers to happen, but that is something we are actually actively building.
Awesome. Okay, that makes sense. No, I totally understand that this is going to be a phased rollout of plumbing and vision and functionality and all the rest. I totally get that, and I get that this is, it's probably more of that distributed marketplace model to start with, where a merchant is going to go and set up a new marketplace, like Jason's Shopify marketplace. That's probably the first cab off the rank from a use case perspective, and probably the easiest to implement. Then collaborative commerce comes after that. And then I guess let's talk about a third use case. So I'm a influencer that's got 1 million followers on Instagram. And at the moment, basically I've got to go and do influencer deals with, let's say I'm a attractive woman and I want to go and I want to be, Fashion Nova, right? And I want to be a Fashion Nova brand ambassador. And they either give me a coupon code that's linked to me, and therefore they can pay me out on all the sales that I help generate through my posts, that people use my unique coupon code, or they've got an affiliate code, or they've got a custom link via Linktree or something like that in their profile, where when you originate on the site via that, it tracks that as an affiliate sale. There's a whole bunch of different ways that happens today, but it's all shitty, it's all ugly, and it's all based on macro influencers, not micro influencers, just being able to easily recommend products that they love just because they love it. And being able to, they basically, micro influencers can't capitalize on the influencer economy today because it doesn't make sense for brands to work with micro influencers, usually because of the extra effort required to put that affiliate model in place with them. It's too much effort, it's too much work, and they don't get enough ROI out of it. So we've effectively got an entire global community of people that are influencers in their own circle that are not being able to participate in the creator economy or in the collaborative commerce economy. And your APIs seem like they are a solution to that, but walk us through how that ultimately turns into a solution from an API.
Yeah, so this gets into our bigger customers a little bit. And also, like, we obviously started with Vault, which is a video shopping platform, and we had influencers wanting to launch little content sites where everything was shoppable. And the funny part is, brands also wanted those influencers to build these sites. And I would say the brands were more passionate about these influencers building these sites, and even influencers were trying to do so. Because the smart brands know that obviously distribution is key. So the more they're all over the web and the more chance someone has of finding their product, the more likely they are to have a sale. And this one's also multi-stage. So our big customers that we actually go after are literally the social networks themselves. So our hope is obviously TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest are actually end customers of us, and then they can provide the ability for any of their influencers to be able to tag any product. But where we really add value and where we are really different to what affiliate platforms are today, and it's why people hate affiliate platforms today, is that everything is link-based. So basically, if I was an influencer and I put an affiliate link, I've now generally placed a cookie, which is obviously now becoming an issue. But then I'll get a payout for 30 days, depending on what people buy. And why brands hate that is that you have all these people trying to do affiliate cookies, especially with apps like Honey now that are trying to steal the last click affiliation from everyone else above them. So the big difference between we don't call it an affiliate network, but it's sort of the same, is that because we actually place the order in real time, we can confirm without a doubt that the influencer was the one that created it. which means that all this thing about reporting and checking that the order's real and really did come from like a genuine video and all this sort of stuff, we obviously solved that because we actually have a relationship between everyone we kind of sit in the middle as the authority to say, hey, yes, they placed the order. Yes, they fulfilled the order. So you owe each other some money. And that's where we really clarify things, in that we have real reporting that's accurate, that's the way I believe it should be, and it's accountable.
Okay, so perfect world scenario. All the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world and the TikToks of the world, they all get on board with Carded, and they effectively make a universal product catalog API available to everyone on their platform. Yep. For them to be able to tag products, and then they'll track that sale as an in-app purchase, and everybody's happy. The influencer gets a bit of money, you get a bit of money, Zuckerberg gets a little bit of money, and then the merchant who actually fulfills the goods gets a little bit of money, and everybody's happy. That's the perfect world scenario. We don't live in a perfect world, and that may take 10 years to come. So let me paint a different picture for you, and you tell me whether this is possible with Carded today, or whether it will be possible in the future. And this is perhaps a way of doing an end run around Zuckerberg if he tells Carded, piss off, we're going to build this all ourselves. Okay. So you've got all these little influencers running around, and you've got Shopify, which so let's say hypothetically Carded does a deal with Shopify, and let's say hypothetically Shopify builds its own app. So there's a few native Shopify apps out there. Obviously, there's the ratings and reviews app. There's scripts and flow, and there's other native out of the box Shopify apps for free in the App Store. So let's say hypothetically you do a deal with Shopify, and Shopify says, Mike, we friggin' love this idea. We're going to build our own bloody app with its own UI in the back end that allows merchants, when they come on board with Shopify, as a value add for going with Shopify versus Magento or SAP Hybris or whatever. We're going to have this app in the back end that connects to your Universal Commerce API, provides the UI for them to add margins, et cetera, and they can all of a sudden start loading up a massive catalog of products almost overnight in their Shopify store and go selling, right? Now, obviously, Shopify's already got a deal with Mr. Zuckerberg to get their catalog pushed into Facebook and Instagram, and they're now facilitating in-app purchases in some countries. And in theory, that will eventually go pretty global, except for maybe Asia, particularly China. And so maybe in the intermediate time frame, if you were to do that kind of deal with Shopify, and Shopify might even say, hey, we've got a catalog only functionality that you won't be selling through your own website on the front end at your own domain. This is purely a catalog plumbing and order processing version or tier of Shopify that someone who's an influencer can sign up to for free. And then that can get their feed into Facebook, and then they can tag their own products, and the in-app purchasing takes place there. They get their cut, and everybody's happy. So is that an intermediate step that you could facilitate that could be rolled out in a matter of literally months, that then would make this accessible to almost everybody, almost everywhere, all at the same time?
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose we have a lot of startups and like mid-range customers that want to be doing this now. And to be honest, they've actually got all this tech already. They're missing the little pieces that they don't have all the products. I think the interesting thing about social commerce is that people today and how those integrations work is that it's all forced by the merchant, and it's not how consumers actually shop. So an example is, if you use Instagram shopping, right, Ed, that's what I mean. They have it today. You see an item you like on an influencer. The next thing you do as a customer is you go to your Chrome, like you go into Chrome, you go into Google, and you search for it because you try and find the best price. You try and find the one with the best delivery. There's a chance the influencer was in a different country, so the one that they're pushing isn't even the one that's available to you. So I suppose we're more about solving it from a consumer point of view by the fact that if an influencer tags that Nike shoe and you're in the US, we fulfill it from a US merchant. We find the best price for you. If you're in Australia and you saw that same post, we actually fulfill it from someone in Australia. We make sure that the service is always at the same level. And for me, that's the big difference of how it's done today versus how we're doing it. because we're actually taking away the shopping, like the actual nuance of actually trying to actually make a purchase decision as well, and providing that to the platform. So in Instagram, instead of obviously selling the merchant that's linking it now, they can obviously now show, hey, these 3 retailers, these are the price. As a consumer, you pick the one that you want to shop with. And it becomes a bit of a different model of how it is today.
Okay, so in order to facilitate that model, you would have to do the deal with Zuckerberg, because there's no other way to create that UI in-app without doing a collaboration with them. Because effectively what you're trying to do is, if I go to Amazon today, I get that experience. If I search for a product, I'm going to see 10 different merchants that I can buy that product through, and I can add it to my cart from any one of them, and it will show me the shipping costs. It will show me the shipping times. It will show me their location. It will show me whether I can buy from that location. It will show me all the information I need to be able to choose which merchant to buy that product off of, including Amazon themselves in Amazon. So what you would like to ideally see is an Amazon-like experience in terms of product discovery directly within the social commerce app itself. And in order to facilitate that, you need Mr. Zuckerberg to do it.
Yep. And we don't even need Mr. We need all of, like, to be honest, we need all of them. And that's the whole idea of what we're building is, and that's why we specifically build this to a certain level, and why we are going to definitely go hard at them, because this model works best, because at the end of the day, it's like Amazon's gaining ground on everyone. And like, I've even talked to a lot of these social networks already, and to be honest, they know they're getting beaten. So it may seem impossible to get. I'd say Zuckerberg's probably going to be the hard one, but like, as far as the other ones, they all know that they want to provide this experience and their consumers want it. So I think they're all starting to be aware that by teaming up a little, not teaming up, but obviously using a network that's distributed is their best chance of success against Amazon, and actually creating an experience consumers want. Because like everyone knows the path Amazon's going down. Obviously, it's in their best interest to keep selling Amazon products. It's in their interest to keep showing their own stuff. And we're not about that. We don't have our own products. We're about facilitating everything between everyone else.
Wow, exciting, ambitious. You know, it's a world-changing concept, and even for someone who's been in e-commerce for over 20 years, it's a challenge for me to fully wrap my own head around. So I can only imagine people that aren't as deep into e-commerce as you and I are would really struggle with some of these concepts. But I think we've done a reasonably good job, or at least I hope we've done a reasonably good job at starting to unpick what this might look like in a future world whereby collaboration becomes more important than competition, if for no other reason than as a bulwark against Amazon. And I really like where you're going with this. I really like, this is a big, hairy, audacious goal. This is a BHAG, if I've ever heard of one. So, I know what we've talked about sounds simple when you describe it maybe in the way that we have, because we've tried to not dumb it down, but we've tried to make it accessible conceptually to a wide audience. But when you're actually trying to build this from a technology perspective, I can only imagine all of the massive challenges involved. Let's talk a little bit, just before we close off, maybe we could talk a little bit about, obviously you've just had a massive funding round from PE, and that's super exciting, and that's going to fuel your growth and allows you to hire more devs and buy more iMacs and do lots of cool stuff, but ultimately put out a better product faster and get it to market faster. So talk us through, because you've been pretty transparent on LinkedIn about, funding and how you've structured your business and how you're going to market. And I really love that, respect that about you. But talk us through a little bit, or at least what you can share about the PE process, how that came about, and really why they wanted to get involved, and how you were able to sell this vision to people who may not be very technical at all. How were you able to paint a good enough picture for PE that they said, shit, yeah, I'm on board with this. I don't want to miss out on the next revolution in e-commerce?
Yeah, I suppose just quick. I suppose VC funding is so. I suppose the thing about VC funding is it's about building. They know that the only way the next thing gets built is if they've got enough capital to build it. And I would say there's a lot of people that go out and get VC funding that probably shouldn't, because you really need to have an idea that can literally potentially be worth $100 billion. If you can't do that, and I would say it's very rare for a company to even be able to do that. It's rare. Like, our chances of success are the standard, which is like 1 in 10. So we are aware of that. We believe it's as big as what it is. If we can get in the middle of e-commerce, the market size is there. So that's how we ended up on the decision of doing the funding. The other part of the decision to get funding is that what we're building is expensive to build. Our services are practically the same as what Google does to run the web, and that they have data centers. We don't. So we have to scale a lot of servers. We have to do a lot of processing. We need seriously talented people that do not come cheap. So we had to go down this route to be able to build this. I suppose the process of getting funding is, it's every VC firm, they have what they call a thesis. So they generally are already they've identified a market, and they're generally already looking for someone that solves the problem that they think needs to be solved. So the luckiest thing is that we just went around to everyone, and you talk to them, and you can basically tell straight away if they're going to understand what you're talking about or they don't. So we were just lucky enough to find some funds that obviously believe in our vision, and then angels as well. So like an example is we have Ryan, who's the founder of Honey, as an investor, and obviously they actually acquired a company that was sort of doing what we were doing. And so when you have people that are in the space that know the problem and they want to see it solved, a lot of people are happy to get behind someone that they think can actually make it happen, because they all want to see the end goal too. They believe it's also the future. So it's not so much about giving us money, or it's more convincing them that we are the ones that are solving this in a way that can actually get the outcome, because it's actually, they want to see the outcome, even though it is a financial. Obviously, they're also trying to make money, but they actually believe in the vision. So it's all about just finding people that believe in the vision, and then definitely showing that you're the one capable of doing it. And we had to do that. It takes a lot of work to do that. You obviously have to show them exactly that you actually can build what you're saying, and that you have a plan, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. Because that's what I mean. In VC funding, like, only 1 in 10 companies ever make the money back. Everyone else loses out. So you have to try and show why you're that 1 in 10.
Makes complete sense. And, VC tends to swing for the fences because they only have to have that 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 be a massive success, and it offsets all their other losses, right? So they're out there writing checks, and it's really just about distributing the risk and spreading that out as wide as they can, whilst also providing enough funding to give you the runway to actually get and achieve the end goal that you've told them you want to achieve, to see if it's a goer. Now, final question. Before we wrap up, and I really appreciate your time. This has been amazing, and I've learned so much, and I've really enjoyed it. And I always love spending time with you, mate. You're just an awesome guy in general. But any fears or concerns about competitors? Now, we all know that Zuckerberg's trying to facilitate in-app purchases around the world. TikTok's already pushing out beta commerce functions to the marketplace. Google's talking about their commerce graph APIs and a whole bunch of other things. We've got sort of competitors that are hinting at doing kind of similar things to what you're talking about, but it all seems pretty light on detail. We all know where they want to get to ultimately, and they want to vertically integrate all of their own ecosystems, and that's why obviously Facebook wanted to get into crypto and a whole bunch of other things, right? So we've got all these different mega giants, billion-dollar companies the world over, trying to stick their sticky beak into commerce so that they don't have to rely on purely advertising revenue, because I believe there's a shelf life associated with that, and that's why they're all trying to get into commerce any way they can, by hook or by crook. So how do you feel about that? How do you visualize the marketplace? Or do you believe the pie is so damn big that you hope all of you succeed in getting there?
Yeah, so I would say it comes down to how they approach it. So I suppose I didn't talk about numbers. So we have support for 2 million stores right now and over 1 billion products, which makes us the biggest. It actually makes us the biggest marketplace, because Amazon's only at 300 million products. So we're about 4 times bigger than Amazon. And we haven't even launched yet. So it's only just going to get bigger and stronger as we roll out. why we don't, I don't ever really worry about them as competitors because they all take the same approach, and that is that they go around to every merchant and they try and sign them up. And if you go, well, hang on, there's 2 million merchants. The amount that you have to sign up per day to even roll that in a year is, I don't know, something ridiculous. It's a few thousand merchants you have to sign up every single day. So that's where our real point of difference, I think, is. And we're not about competing with them. I suppose the one thing we can collaborate, even if they wanted to sign up the first 10,000 merchants because they can get a better commercial deal working with them directly, we don't even mind. We'll just fill that extra 1.9 million people that they don't have. And we'll just show that our model always works better, because for me, it's believing in, we've always built this from, hey, how do we get to the end product? And we're doing everything we can to get to that. And I think no matter how other way that I've ever looked at it, there's no real way to get to that end goal without the consumer experience being like broken. So I welcome the competition. Obviously, if I had to say one company is capable of slightly doing anything we're doing, is Google, because the product graph in my mind is the most powerful part of, because we have a product graph as well. I think that's the most powerful part, because until you understand the products are for sale, you can probably, I don't think you can show an experience to the consumers that they actually are expecting. And I didn't talk about, we also have other services like a Lens API coming out so that we can actually detect real products in videos. So when you start to think about platforms like TikTok, where people are posting content, we don't even need them to tag a product. We just need to run that video through our tech, and we can tell you every product that's in there and provide like a link to the actual checkout experience on top of that. So we're about trying to make this as seamless for those apps and helping them to provide a consumer experience that makes everyone's life easier, I guess.
Love it, mate. Thank you so much for your time. When is V1 due to be released, and what does MVP look like for you?
So that's actually a funny one. You think we would have a set time? We are being we are controlling the release. We probably could have done a V1 already. But we will, like, a big part of what we do, it means it has to be rolled out in the right way with the right partners. So we're currently just working through that. I would say it's coming this year. Exactly when, I probably can't say, because it's going to depend on how fast the other people in the equation move. But yeah, this year is something big. We'll see the first real example of this happening, and people will be able to see what it really looks like when you get your hands on it.
Legend. Can't wait, mate. And I love the sneak peeks of the mock-up demos that you've been posting to LinkedIn. It's been good. It's been good for the hype. The hype engine's working. It's getting people interested. It's keeping them on the hook. It's obviously worked for the VCs, because obviously it lets them know that you're out there and evangelizing the product before it's even really a product. And look, I love what you're doing. I love how you're doing it. I hope you are massively successful. You bloody well deserve it. You and the team, you and Holly and the whole team bloody well deserve it. And it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I really genuinely mean that. All the conversations we've had, you're just not an asshole. And I've met plenty of those in our industry over the years that just, the level of self-delusions of grandeur in our industry sometimes are pretty ridiculous. And you've just never been like that. You've always been really down to earth, salt of the earth kind of guy, and just a really genuine Aussie bloke. And I've always had awesome conversations with you. So I genuinely wish you every success. And I cannot wait. I think you have a genuine shot at transforming commerce as we know it and making commerce everywhere, particularly with 5G and IoT, a real possibility. And I'm super stoked about that prospect, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. That's what I mean. It's great to have people in the industry like yourself to obviously lean on and obviously support the actual what we're building. Because at the end of the day, we need everyone to sort of come on board and support what we're doing. So it's great to know that people are doing so.
Totally, man. Oh, well, look, we'll take this offline, and let's see if we can let's see how we can work together even more. Because I love the story, I love the model, I love what you're doing. So yeah, and let's maybe in another few months let's have another session, and let's see where you've gone. Say in 3-4 months time, let's maybe do another pod, and we'll see how things have progressed, and you can give us a bit of an update. And I'd love to make it a bit of a series with you over the next 12 months or so that we can keep up to speed with what's happening over at Cardew.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate your time. Let's chat soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, mate. Bye. Thanks for listening to the At the Coalface podcast. If you want more At the Coalface, you can subscribe to our premium e-commerce and digital newsletter, At the Coalface Digest.